93% of traders are focusing on the wrong type of fear. You're probably one of them. While most traders obsess over the fear of losing money, it's actually three completely different fears that determine whether you'll succeed or fail in this market. And the one that's costing you the most money, it's not what you think. I learned this the hard way. Back in 2018, I watched a perfectly good trading account evaporate in just 4 days. $50,000 gone. Not because I was afraid of losing, but because I was terrified of missing out. That fear of missing opportunities drove me to break every rule in my trading plan. Here's what nobody tells you about fear in trading. It's not about eliminating it. It's about understanding which fears actually matter and which ones are trying to protect you. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 3 specific fears that control every decision you make in the market, and more importantly, how to use them to your advantage instead of letting them destroy your account. You see, most trading psychology advice gets it completely backwards. They tell you to control your emotions or be fearless. But what if I told you that your fear isn't the enemy? What if the very thing you're trying to eliminate is actually the key to consistent profitability? Let me show you what I mean. Think about the last time fear made you exit a trade too early. That familiar surge of anxiety, the racing thoughts, the overwhelming urge to hit that sell button, even though your strategy said to hold. We've all been there. But here's what's fascinating. That fear you felt wasn't really about losing money. It was about something much deeper. The GameStop saga of 2021 showed us exactly how fear can warp even the most rational minds. Traders who'd spent years developing disciplined strategies suddenly threw their rule books out the window. Why? Because they were watching others make fortunes overnight. The fear wasn't about losing money, it was about missing out on life-changing gains, and that fear cost many of them everything. You see, your brain processes trading fears differently than regular fears. When you're afraid of heights or spiders, your amygdala triggers a simple fight or flight response. But trading fears are more complex. They activate the same neural pathways as social rejection and status loss. That's why traditional advice about controlling emotions through meditation or breathing exercises often falls short. They're targeting the wrong type of fear. It's like trying to fix a leak in your roof by mopping the floor. Sure, you might feel like you're doing something, but you're not addressing the real problem. Your trading fears aren't just about money. They're about identity, status, and self-worth. And until you understand this hierarchy of trading fears, you'll keep repeating the same destructive patterns. I discovered this the hard way after blowing up 3 trading accounts. Each time I thought I had my emotions under control. I'd done the meditation, I'd practiced the breathing techniques, I'd read all the trading psychology books, but I kept making the same mistakes because I was focusing on managing the surface-level fear of losing money while completely ignoring the deeper fears that were actually driving my decisions. What I didn't realize then, and what most traders never learn, is that there's a specific hierarchy to trading fears. Understanding this hierarchy is the key to breaking free from destructive trading patterns. And it all starts with recognizing the 3 core fears that control every decision you make in the market. But before we'll dive into those 3 fears, let me show you why everything you think you know about trading psychology might be working against you. When you look at your trading fears closely, you'll find they fall into 3 distinct categories, forming what I call the fear hierarchy. At the bottom, you've got the basic fear of losing money. Above that sits the fear of missing out, what traders know as FOMO. But at the very top, there's something far more insidious, the fear of being wrong. Think of it like an iceberg. The fear of losing money is just the visible tip, the part you're consciously aware of. But lurking beneath the surface, FOMO and the fear of being wrong are much larger, more dangerous forces that can sink your entire trading career. Here's what makes this hierarchy so treacherous. The higher you go, the more emotional damage it can do to your trading. You might think losing money is your biggest fear, but I've seen countless traders blow up their accounts not because they were afraid of losses, but because they couldn't bear to miss out on what looked like a sure thing. Take James, a crypto trader I mentored in early 2022. While everyone around him was still buying Bitcoin at $60,000, he recognized his FOMO for what it was, a fear of missing status, not missing profits. By understanding the fear hierarchy, he was able to step back and avoid the crash that wiped out so many others. Today, his account is still intact, while many of his peers lost everything chasing that last bit of upside. But here's what's fascinating. Neuroscience shows that FOMO activates the same brain regions as physical pain. That's right, Seeing others profit while you're on the sidelines literally hurts, and social media has made this pain more intense than ever. Every time you open Twitter or Reddit, you're bombarded with people bragging about their winning trades, triggering your FOMO response dozens of times per day. At the top of the hierarchy, the fear of being wrong is the most destructive because it attacks your identity as a trader. It's not just about money anymore, it's about your self-worth. This is why you'll hold on to losing trades far too long, averaging down again and again, trying to prove you were right all along. You've probably experienced this yourself. Think about your worst trade ever. Was it really the money that hurt the most? Or was it the feeling of being wrong, of having to admit to yourself that your analysis, your conviction, your very identity as a trader was flawed? Understanding this hierarchy is crucial because each level requires a different approach to overcome. Breathing exercises might help with the fear of losing money, but they won't touch FOMO. And all the position sizing rules in the world won't help if you're really trading to prove you're smart. But here's where it gets really interesting and potentially dangerous. Most traders who think they've mastered their fear of loss are actually just shifting it upward in the hierarchy. They're not conquering their fears. They're transforming them into something more destructive. And nowhere is this more evident than in what I call the FOMO trap. Let me tell you about the FOMO trap because I see traders fall into it every single day. You know that feeling when you're watching Tesla rocket higher, day after day, and your fingers hovering over the buy button. That's FOMO in its purest form. But it's far more dangerous than most traders realize. Take the Tesla rally of 2020. The stock shot up 695% in a single year, and I watched countless traders destroy their accounts trying to catch that move. Not because they were wrong about the direction. Tesla did go up, but because FOMO drove them to take absolutely insane position sizes. Here's what typically happens. You see a stock moving without you, and your brain starts playing tricks. If I just took a bigger position, I could make back all my recent losses. Or, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I need to go big. Sound familiar? This is FOMO hijacking your risk management. I had a client who turned $50,000 into $12,000 during that Tesla rally. Not by shorting it, by buying it. He kept scaling up his position size because FOMO convinced him each new high was his last chance to get in big. When the inevitable pullback came, his oversized position blew right through his stop losses. FOMO has 3 primary triggers in trading, and you need to recognize them. First, there's the missing out on profits trigger, watching others make money without you. Second, there's the missing the entry trigger, when you've been watching a setup and the stock starts moving without you. And third, there's the revenge FOMO trigger, when you get shaken out of a trade only to watch it go in your intended direction. Each of these triggers creates a distinct trading behavior. The profit FOMO makes you chase hot sectors with oversized positions. The entry FOMO causes you to buy breakouts without confirmation. And revenge FOMO? That's when you re-enter with double size, usually at the worst possible moment. But here's what nobody tells you about FOMO. It's not actually about fear of missing out. It's about the fear of admitting you're not in control. When you see a stock running without you, it's proof that the market doesn't care about your analysis, your timing, or your trading plan. And that loss of control is what really drives the panic buying. I learned this from a hedge fund manager who never seemed affected by FOMO. His secret wasn't better discipline or stronger willpower. It was something entirely counterintuitive that completely transformed how he viewed market movements. But before I share his insight, you need to understand why most traditional FOMO advice fails miserably. You've probably heard people say there's always another trade, or stick to your plan. That's like telling someone with arachnophobia to just don't be afraid of spiders. It completely misses the psychological dynamics at play. FOMO isn't a rational response that you can simply think your way out of. The real solution has nothing to do with restraint or rules. In fact, trying to fight FOMO head-on usually makes it worse. Instead, you need to understand how FOMO connects to a deeper psychological pattern that affects every aspect of your trading. I call this the mastery paradox, and it's about to change everything you think you know about trading psychology. Here's the fascinating thing about the mastery paradox. The more experience you gain as a trader, the more susceptible you can become to FOMO. It sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? But I've seen it happen countless times, and it happened to me in the most painful way possible. Back in 2019, I'd just closed out the best quarter of my trading career. 18 winning trades in a row, and my confidence was through the roof. I felt like I could see patterns forming before they happened, like I'd finally cracked the code. That's when I took the biggest loss of my career. Not because I was reckless, but because I was experienced. You see, your brain is constantly trying to recognize patterns. It's how we survived as a species. But in trading, this pattern recognition superpower can become your worst enemy. The more trades you win, the more patterns you think you see, and the stronger your conviction becomes that you know what's coming next. It's like a card counter at a casino who's been winning consistently. They start to feel invincible, like they've mastered the game. But here's what they forget: past patterns don't guarantee future outcomes. The deck gets reshuffled, and suddenly their perfect system falls apart. This is where the Dunning-Kruger effect hits traders like a freight train. When you're new, you know you don't know anything, but after some success, you enter this dangerous zone where you think you know more than you actually do. Your selective memory kicks in. You remember all the patterns that worked and conveniently forget the ones that didn't. Think about your last 10 trades. Can you remember them all equally? Or do the winners stand out more clearly? This isn't just random. Your brain is literally rewriting your trading history, creating a highlight reel that makes you feel more in control than you really are. And that's exactly when FOMO becomes most dangerous. Because now you're not just afraid of missing out on profit, you're afraid of missing out on proving your mastery. Every trade that moves without you feels like a personal affront, challenging your identity as a skilled trader who can read the markets. I see this all the time with traders who've had some success. They start taking trades they would have never touched as beginners. Why? Because now they can see the subtle signs and feel the market's momentum. They've replaced fear with a different kind of danger, overconfidence masked as experience. Remember that hedge fund manager I mentioned? His breakthrough came when he realized that his best trades weren't the result of superior pattern recognition. They came from accepting that patterns break. He developed a system that actually leveraged his brain's tendency to invent patterns, but in a completely different way than you might expect. This brings us to what I call the systematic paradox, a counterintuitive approach that completely transforms how you handle market movements. It's not about fighting FOMO or developing iron discipline. Instead, it's about working with your brain's pattern recognition instincts rather than against them. And the way it works might surprise you. Let me share something that might sound strange at first. The best way to beat fear isn't through courage. It's through systems. Think about it like this. When you're driving, you don't constantly debate whether to stop at red lights. You just do it. It's systematic. And that's exactly what the world's most successful trading firms have figured out. Take Renaissance Technologies, for example. They've generated over 66% annual returns for 3 decades straight. And here's their secret. They don't let their traders make discretionary decisions. Every trade is executed by algorithms that don't feel fear, don't chase FOMO, and don't care about proving themselves right. Now, I'm not saying you need to become a quant fund, but you do need what I call a pre-commitment strategy. This is where you decide exactly what you'll do in any market scenario before it happens. It's like having a fire escape plan. You don't want to figure out your exit route when the building's already burning. Remember that meditation technique I mentioned earlier? Here's why it works. It's not about calming your nerves in the moment. It's about training your brain to recognize emotional impulses before they hijack your decision-making. When you combine this awareness with preset rules, something remarkable happens. Fear loses its grip on your trades. Let's get practical. Your position sizing strategy is your first line of defense against FOMO. Most traders get this backwards. They size up when they're feeling confident and size down when they're scared. But that hedge fund manager I told you about? He did the opposite. He increased position sizes only when his system showed multiple confirming signals, regardless of how he felt about the trade. Think of it like a thermostat. You don't manually adjust your home's temperature every 5 minutes. You set parameters, and the system maintains them automatically. Your trading rules should work the same way. When Bitcoin's moving up 20% in a day, you don't need willpower to avoid FOMO if your system clearly states no entries after a 10% daily move. This is where most traders get stuck. They create rules, but then treat them like guidelines. That's not a system. That's just wishful thinking with extra steps. A true system removes decision fatigue. It transforms trading from a series of emotional choices into a process of systematic execution. But here's what nobody tells you about trading systems. They don't have to be complex to work. In fact, the simpler they are, the more likely you'll actually follow them. The best system isn't the one with the most indicators or the fanciest algorithms. It's the one you'll stick to when your emotions are screaming at you to break your rules. This brings us to what I consider the most powerful insight about fear in trading, something that completely changed how I approach the markets. It's not about eliminating fear, it's about transforming it from an enemy into an ally. And to understand how this works, we need to look at what's really happening in your brain when you're facing a trading decision. Here's what changed everything for me. Fear isn't your enemy. It's your built-in risk management system. The problem isn't that you feel fear while trading. It's that you're afraid of the wrong things at the wrong times. Think about it. When a trade goes against you, most traders will say they're afraid of losing money. But dig deeper, and you'll find they're really afraid of being wrong, of looking foolish, of having to admit they made a mistake. This misidentified fear is what keeps you in losing trades far too long. I discovered this the hard way in 2019. I was holding a massive position in crude oil futures, watching it move against me tick by tick. My system clearly said to exit at a 2% loss, but I was frozen, not by the fear of losing money, but by the fear of admitting I was wrong. That trade eventually cost me 12% of my account. Here's the breakthrough. When you learn to recognize what you're actually afraid of, you can flip that fear into an advantage. I call it the fear flip technique. When you feel FOMO during a market rally, that's not really fear of missing out. It's fear of regret. And guess what? The stronger that FOMO feels, the more likely we're near a top. Professional traders use their fear as a market indicator. When you're terrified to take a trade that meets all your criteria, that's often the exact trade you should take. When you're absolutely certain a trade can't lose, that's precisely when you should be most cautious. The key is developing what I call your fear compass. Instead of trying to suppress your fears, learn to read them. Are you afraid because you're breaking your rules, or because you're following them perfectly but the outcome is uncertain? The first type of fear is your ally. Listen to it. The second type is your enemy. Learn to act in spite of it. This realization transformed my trading completely. Fear became my checklist, my warning system, my built-in risk manager. And once you understand this distinction, you'll never look at trading psychology the same way again. But knowing this isn't enough. You need a practical framework to implement it. Let me show you the exact 3-step process I use to transform trading fear into trading fuel. So here's exactly what you need to do starting today. First, keep a fear journal. Every time you feel that surge of anxiety before a trade, write down what you think you're afraid of. Then write down what you're actually afraid of. You'll be amazed how often they're different. Second, create your personal fear flip checklist. When FOMO hits, ask yourself, if I take this trade and lose, what's the real reason I'll regret it? If the answer is because I broke my rules, don't trade. If it's because the market might prove me wrong, that's your signal to execute. Third, and this is crucial, start using the 93% rule. Remember how 93% of traders quit because they can't handle the emotional toll? Use that as your edge. When a trade feels emotionally impossible to take, but your system says you should, that's exactly when the 93% are fleeing. That's your moment to strike. The truth is, fear will always be part of trading, but it doesn't have to control you. Instead of trying to become fearless, become fear-fluent. Learn to read your fear like a master sailor reads the wind, not as something to fight against, but as the very force that propels you forward. Next week, I'll show you how to apply these same principles to position sizing psychology.